Good morning to all of you. We've gone through some tumultuous times and we have some trials and tribulations. Spoken about it a lot in the book of James, and it will continue for a while, but it will end. I was listening to a song the other day from Building 429 called The Blessing I Can't See. And I truly believe that in spite of all the difficulties and in spite of all the trials that we're going through, that God has a blessing that we can't see. And I wanted to share a devotional with you from the book of Esther, chapter 3, starting in verse 1. And God has some thoughts about that. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king had commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. I think trials, tribulations, and especially in the time that we're going through, and in the time that a lot of Old Testament and New Testament believers went through, is a great analogy of God's sovereignty in the midst of a chaotic world. Trials are inevitable, and that's my first simple little point. It's a matter of when, not if. And it's important for us to remember that. Many times we blame God for situations and circumstances, but trials are inevitable. James tells us that in James chapter 1. But we see it in the book of Esther, and we see it in Esther's life and Mordecai, her uncle. Continuing on in Esther 4:1, it says, when Mordecai learned about all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on the burlap and ashes, and went into the city, crying with a loud and bitter wail. He went as far as the gate of the palace, for no one was allowed to enter the palace gate while wearing clothes of mourning. And as the news of the king's decree reached all the provinces, there was great mourning among the Jews. They fasted, they wept and wailed, and many people lay in burlap and ashes. And when Queen Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was deeply distressed. She sent clothing to him to replace the burlap, but he refused it. The Jews were going to be executed, and a man by the name of Haman was seeing that it would be done. He was jealous of them, and he wanted to destroy all of them. Of course, they found out about that, and when they found out about it, they went into mourning because it was a horrible, horrible situation. The second point I want to make is this. Sorrow is normal. It is a God-given emotion. The problems that we face, the emotions that we have, the feelings that are generated are God-given emotions, and He gives us those in response to situations. And it's okay to feel sorrowful. It's okay to feel sad. That's a natural part of grief. But in the backdrop, we have to keep remembering that God is working. Continuing on in Esther chapter 4, verse 5, it says, then Esther sent for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs who had been appointed as her attendant. She ordered him to go to Mordecai and find out what was troubling him and why he was in mourning. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the square of the front of the palace gate. Mordecai told him the whole story, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree issued in Susa that called for the death of all Jews. He asked Hathach to show it to Esther and explain the situation to her. He also asked Hathach to direct her to go to the king to beg for mercy and plead for the people. And the next simple point I would like to make is this. God uses people. He sees what we don't. God sees the whole tapestry. We don't. We see bits and pieces here and there. We feel the tragedy and we feel the sorrow, but God sees the big picture. And it's the blessing that we can't see that's going on around us. Esther 4:9 says, so Hathach returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. And then Esther told Hathach to go back and relay the message to Mordecai. All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out the gold scepter. And the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. So Mordecai, the uncle of Esther, is sending her to the king. She is the queen. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, Deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just a time as this? For just a time as this. That's a precious promise. It's said through Mordecai, but it's echoed throughout the Bible. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? Her position of being queen, a Jewish queen, was there for a purpose, and it was to deliver her people from execution. So as we go through these tragedies and difficult times and situations and circumstances, and sometimes it seems like it's going to be endless, it won't. God is working, and he sees the big picture. Let me read to you some of the words of the song by Building 429, and the song again is titled, "The Blessing I Can't See." I'm lifting up my heart again, because even when I can see the plan, I know your love is closing in on me. You hold the whole world in your hands. Still you feel the pain you understand. Ain't just a war I'm standing in, oh no. It's a blessing I can't see yet. It's a blessing I can't see yet. Heartache doesn't mean that you're not working, always. Even when it won't stop hurting, I know. Every setback was a setup from something greater that you had in store. That's the blessing that God has in store for us. So remember, you can't see it, but the blessing's just around the corner. I hope you have a good day, and we're praying for you.